too trippy, get it cracking like a levy. I'ma show 'em all how to party if they let me. Cue the countdown and release the confetti. The party don't start till I get there. Sit aside and the rest and it ain't fair. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Yeah, give me my crown if it's just right. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. Watch this. Pull up with the top down. Ain't anything. I'm way too hot now. I radiate. Don't need a rear view. They're behind me. Cause my future's so bright in my blind. Hold up. Why I gotta shine so bright? Don't need a reason. Escorting my haters out. They wish you sleeping. Can't be nobody else. I'ma be myself. So they gon' have to watch me treat myself. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good. Don't let it watch yourself, huh? Cause you make it look good. Watch yourself, huh?
Welcome to WYCD Wicked, that stands for What You Can Do. Yet another wonderful day in the United States of America and planet Earth. As, yes, as Jess Rush puts it wonderfully, indictment season has been fabulous. Ooh, it's been so good. Jess Rush, good to see you. Cortez Crimson, good to see you. Wicked Foxy Dragon, hello. Ooh, looks like YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Well, let's hope that just pans out. Hello to everybody. Domenico, good to see you. Oh, yeah. So, obviously, we got to talk about, I say got to, like it's not the thing I'm champing at the bit for. We got to talk about the new indictment. The arraignment happened for Donald Trump today in that little thing he was involved with a couple of years back, January 6th. You know, the attempted coup. Oh, yeah. It's happening. Jack Smith is bringing the pain that has been, look, Jack Smith is bringing that ass whipping that Donald Trump has been asking for. Just want to really stress that as Donald Trump is dragged into court on a Thursday, again and again and again, as these things keep happening, he asked for every inch of this. He gave the U.S. Justice Department absolutely no choice. And if you're wondering, is there proof of this, that they had no choice? I would point you to every other former president that have just been allowed to get away with crimes. I mean war crimes. I mean embezzling. I mean the worst behavior that exists. They've just been allowed to get away with it. But Trump, he did something unique. He went after the establishment. And it's a good thing that the establishment finally decided to get off its butt in defense of itself, because that means they are finally required to defend us. Let's have a look at what CNN had to say about it. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. There we go.
outside the courthouse with, who's getting details from our folks inside the courtroom. Paula, what are you hearing?
An extraordinary moment, Anderson. The former president was asked to stand and enter his own plea to the charges that have been filed against him. And I'm told he didn't even use the microphone. He just looked straight at the judge and projected his voice and entered a plea of not guilty. Now, again, at the hearing down in Florida, when he went through this in a federal courtroom down there, he had his lawyer enter that plea. So to hear him say that in his own voice is significant. Now the judge is reading the conditions of his release.
All right, I'm interested in those conditions. It's not significant. It doesn't matter. The fact that he said it as opposed to whatever. Thoroughly and completely, who gives a damn?
You may remember that down in Florida, this is actually what delayed the hearing. But here she's saying that you must not violate state or federal law, and also that he cannot communicate with anyone known to be a witness about the case unless through a lawyer. Now, that could get tricky because, as we know, he's listed with 6 co-conspirators, many of whom are still close associates. So much like in the Mar-a-Lago documents case, the fact that so many people in his inner circle are caught up in this, that will likely be a difficult issue to navigate. Just looking really quickly.
All right. For you all, I would put out this suggestion. I have not seen 2 full months go by without Trump violating a state or federal law. Since I've been aware of the guy, I have not seen a full 2 months go by without Trump publicly breaking the law. All these judges are bluffing. That's what I've seen. When it comes to Donald Trump, these judges don't really mean what they say, and therefore their orders don't need to be followed. It's not, Donald Trump doesn't need to have respect for the court, respect for the authority that the court is supposed to have, and for that matter, then we don't either. Trump is just some guy. He's no different than you or me. So what I gather is that when Trump, for example, as a condition of his release, as in it's a special privilege that he gets to be out here bothering us right now, doing what he does. And as one of the conditions of his privilege to not yet be held by the government, he is told that he may not violate a law. So, when he does, when we see he's yet again broken the law, whatever it ends up being, let's write this judge and ask if we can also simply choose to ignore what the court says. Let's ask if that's a condition of every single bail that he's got, every single release that he has. So let's write all of his judges and say, apparently, you don't need to be respected. So I just thought I would, thought I'd write you and clarify. Is this what I'm seeing? Is this correct? That when you say something, it's not an order. It's just you wasting the breath to speak, and it has no significance beyond that. Because I'm simply going to choose not to pay any ticket I receive. And if the judge says I have to, I'll laugh at them and moonwalk out of the courtroom. Because the word of a judge means nothing. Just keep your eyes peeled for when Trump is caught contacting one of these other 6 folks. By the way, very curious to hear your thoughts on who the 6th co-conspirator is. But keep that in mind. When Trump is caught contacting these folks, or when he breaks just a different law, unrelated to this, except that he was told that as a condition of his bail, he cannot break the law. Be ready to write the judge and mock them. And make sure they see that you see that they are being disrespected and that you are considering the implications for that as a citizen of this same country. Because that will hopefully shame them into taking their own orders seriously, into having a little bit of backbone and enforcing their orders.
To see if there are any other significant.
And by the way, if you do that, and you successfully get this man's bail revoked, you can be the person that put Donald Trump behind bars. It's a very real possibility.
Significant things from the judge. Yeah, she's reminding him that it is a crime to influence a juror or threaten a witness or retaliate against anyone else who provided information or otherwise obstruct justice. Of course, he has been charged with not only obstruction of justice, but obstructing his own alleged obstruction. So she's going through all of these standard things that you would go through with any defendant, but again, taking on a different significance with a former leader of the free world. We are told, again, by our colleague Hannah Rabinowitz, who's inside, he has agreed to all of these conditions. He has now sat down, and they are bringing the actual paperwork to his attorney.
All right, Paul, we'll check in with you shortly. Alyssa, did you have any doubt that the former president would show up in person to this?
You know, there's this kind of speculation within Trump's orbit, those who are still with him, that actually multiple indictments is better for him than one, and that they want to try to use this as they can in the PR space to try to boost his reelection. So I think because of that, he wanted to show up. He wants to be indignant. And, you know, on the sidelines of this, he's got amplifiers out giving press conferences, you know, talking about things like Hunter Biden that have nothing to do with this. And he's got folks on Capitol Hill defending him. But I do.
I heard Van Jones saying in response to the question, how will this affect his campaign? This is the campaign. And I agree. But think about who he's campaigning to. To me, if this is the campaign, I'm worried about a lot of things, but I'm not worried that Donald Trump will be legally elected president of the United States. Again, this doesn't mean don't even toy with the idea that any of us can do anything less than the absolute maximum effort we are able to summon in 2024. We will need to have all hands on deck. But if this is his campaign, trying to show up and hold his head high in court over that coup he tried, okay, well, I don't think he's winning the independent voter there.
I think that it's important to echo something Van said. To the degree that I know the former president, this is a sobering moment. There is going to be this moment that it sets in. This is happening again and is out of his hands. Things are out of his control in this moment and as this legal process carries out. And I think that we also have to remember this is a man with a lack of self-control. And those words that he was just issued by the judge, you know, about what he's able to do, what he can do with witnesses, the jury, and so forth, that I think is when his attorneys start getting nervous because he tends to use his megaphone, say whatever he thinks. We know he's gone after and in some ways I would say intimidated Jack Smith. So I think it's also going to be notable to watch how he reacts after he leaves the courtroom, if he gets on his Truth Social and says what we expect him to.
Man?
Yeah, you know, in some ways, this would be a normal person's nightmare and maybe a narcissist's dream, you know, to be martyred, you know, for his cause, for his people, to have to go and face the establishment. I'm doing this for you, and then to be able to go back. He usually does some big rally or something. But, you know, at some point, I would imagine, this is just not the way that he thought it was going to work out. I think that when you run for office with, you know, city council, class president, you have some idea it's going to be a good thing for you. And this is turning out to be something, you know, quite different. You know, I think the other thing is that if you listen to the other network that we never mentioned, it's the exact same storyline. It's just flipped. Everybody agrees that it's wrong for a president to abuse power to stay in office. I think myself, I look at this, yes, it's wrong. Trump abused power to try to stay in office. But there's a reverse mirror world narrative that says, no, it's Biden abusing his power by sticking the DOJ on Trump so that Biden can stay in office. So
now, hopefully you understand why that is done. That is done in order to confuse people that don't follow politics all that closely, which is the majority of Americans. When it gets confusing, people default to their default sides. That has been the standard operating procedure for Republicans for as long as I have been conscious on this earth. People who vote conservative tend to do so because they are from a culture that says conservative equals practical. Conservative equals not really worrying about feelings, just worrying about results. Of course, if you follow this at all, you know that conservative in the United States really means doing the bidding of the wealthy, stealing from the American people, and that's that. Oh, excuse me, and using racism in order to convince those fanatical few that for some reason it's of benefit to harm certain communities. That's all this is. And you can generally tell what Republicans are afraid of based on what they are accusing Democrats of doing. So they're really focusing on Hunter Biden. I bet in the near future, after this Trump stuff gets dealt with, there's going to be questions about Kushner. And those will be legitimate questions. I bet very shortly we're going to get questions about Don Jr. and Eric and Ivanka again. Their playbook is actually pretty easy to understand if you have an incredibly low opinion and therefore an accurate assessment of the American conservative.
Trump has been quite masterful at getting half the country now to go along with this delusion that he has that somehow he's the victim here when he's not.
You know, let's check in with Caitlin.
I do really hate words like masterful because it gives too much credit to the man, and it gives us then a poor understanding of how this stuff is done. It's like somebody who cheats at a game being called a brilliant strategist. Oh, I was playing chess with this guy, and he was such a brilliant strategist. You see, he did. I was relying on a king's gambit, and I was going to castle, and then blah, 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 blah. And what he did was take a broom and whack all of my pieces off the board, and I couldn't do anything. I didn't have any pieces to counter his moves then. He's a brilliant strategist. It's not terribly, it doesn't take a lot of creativity. It doesn't take a lot of strategizing to cheat. It just takes a lack of respect for the rules. So what Van Jones is praising here is a lack of respect for the rules. That's all he's done. And he hasn't masterfully got half the country convinced of a thing. Another way to put that is he's lied, and half the country believed him. That's all.
Collins outside the courthouse. Caitlin?
Yeah, Anderson, obviously we're learning more about this is going on. We are told, obviously, that the judge is doing as we expected here, not seeking any kind of pretrial detention. But Paula, as we are learning about what's happening here, the judge said that she has actually she talked to Judge Chutkan, who's going to be the actual judge overseeing this entire case, about what the next steps are here and what a date could look like.
That's exactly right. And this was something we expected could happen, that Judge Chutkan would back channel and say, hey, this is when I would like you to set the next hearing, because you have all the parties there. So the judge here says, the magistrate judge says, with respect to moving forward, she's consulted with Judge Chutkan, and they have 3 dates that they've suggested: August 21st, August 22nd, and August 28th. Giving specific times. I mean, this is so procedural, right? But these little decisions, Caitlin, when they have this hearing over time, this adds up. Days turn into weeks, and this could be the difference between whether this gets tried before the election or not. So right now,
it looks like they've gone with the latest possible date there, the 28th. But folks, that's like a normal turnaround for a crime. That is actually, to my shock and delight, Trump being treated like a normal criminal defendant. This is good news. This is I'm sure we're going to have more arguments, but that is an actual admirable time to be set for the next stage of this.
the lawyers are talking about when they want to have their first hearing.
These 3 dates, I mean, August 23rd is the first debate in Milwaukee, the first Republican primary debate. Trump has said he's not going to that. But the idea that he could be in court again for this hearing, for this case, right before all of his opponents are on stage, is just notable in and of itself.
It is notable, and you make a great point, because if you look at the calendar for all the things that a potential Republican presidential candidate has to attend, has to do, the deadlines, the events, there's so much overlap with all the other legal issues that he is facing, right? He has a civil trial scheduled in January, another one scheduled next March. It's almost impossible to find a big chunk of the calendar where you can try to put a trial or anything else that doesn't in any way overlap with some of his activities as the presumptive Republican nominee. So we'll see which date they settle on, but this will be the first hearing before the judge overseeing the trial. It's unlikely that the former president will have to attend. He'll probably have the option, but it will be very procedural, all about scheduling, just like we saw in Florida. And while that's so mundane, right, setting the calendar, here it's so incredibly significant when so much of the defense strategy is delay, delay, delay.
Yeah, and so we'll see if the judge goes along with that. I want to bring in CNN's Evan Perez, who is just inside the courtroom. Evan, I mean, we're now learning that the judge has set and agreed with Trump's attorneys on August 28th, 2023 at 10 a.m. That is 5 days after the first Republican debate is going to happen in Milwaukee. We don't expect Trump to attend that. But, Evan, can you tell us what it was like inside the room?
Well, yeah, look, the former president, maybe it's the fact that this is his third time going through an arraignment. But his body language was, absolutely a lot different. I mean, he sat there with his hands clasped. He appeared displeased about something. There was something that the pretrial services official who was in the courtroom handed papers to his attorneys, to the Justice Department attorneys there, Tom Windham and John Lauro on Mr. Trump's side. And then they began discussing whatever it is in perhaps the bail package. That's typically the paperwork that he is handed, and then he is signing it. There was something in that paperwork that appeared to displease the former president, because he had a couple of seemed to be heated conversations with Todd Blanche, who was seated to his right. The former president mostly looked straight ahead. He looked around the room. There were a few times where he and Tom Windham, he and Jack Smith looked at each other.
He finally got the courage to look back, huh? All right, only took a couple of tries. I would be lying if I said I wasn't interested in what offended Trump in that bail package. But it's not like he wouldn't take offense at somebody referring to him as Mr. Trump, accurately. He would be offended if somebody didn't refer to him as Dr. Trump. even though he has no such degree. I mean, I glean nothing from that. I would just say on this topic, keep an eye out. Keep an eye out for when Trump violates his bail. I will do it right here with you. Whichever, a gold doubloon to whoever notices it first. And we will write the judge and ask, essentially goad them. You don't have the guts to enforce your own order? You don't have the sand for it? Pathetic. Make them feel bad. Make them feel seen. Make them feel embarrassed. They should be, because they're going to allow a defendant in a court of law to make fools of them. So be ready for that. However, that said, this judge, just like Jack Smith, this judge so far, I have no notes for. Fantastic. We're off to a hell of a good start on the most important trial probably in American history. Let's hope it's a trial towards the beginning of that book and not towards the end. Tinkerbell laughing at the displeased. Yes. John Bailey, it's great to be a member. Hell yes, brother. Oh. Rex Trek, Jesus Christ, I'd like to tell him off to his face. Yes. God, that'd be satisfying. Oh. Jess Rush, possible Antichrist? Look, I could see it. Well, we're talking about Barron. I get silent Sith Lord vibes from that creepy fellow. Listen, I'm gonna break this down for you here. I don't go for conspiracy theories often, but this one it doesn't matter, and so I feel comfortable shooting off about it. Barron has just got to be that one Russian basketball player's kid, right? Right? Barron stands taller than a giraffe's ass on a trampoline. He's taller than any of his supposed siblings. Well, okay, if you're raised in a family, then the siblings are the siblings. But he stands taller than all of his siblings. He looks an awful lot like a certain Russian basketball player that Ivanka knew. Not Ivanka, no, Melania. There we go. That Melania knew. Sorry, I was getting Trump's wives confused. And I don't know. I think we're going to find out after the inheritance is settled that there's reason to believe that Barron doesn't even think he's Trump's kid. I think at the very least, even if it turns out that Barron is actually Trump's kid, I think Barron is going to have his own headcanon about that. Oh, John Bailey, good man. Push that like button. Yes, please. Rex Track, that was his daughter / wife. Yeah. Oh, my word. All right. I have one hopes I can do this. I got an apology to make. Let's do it. I very much want to issue this apology. The other night, I said something that was actually pretty damn hurtful and just rude. I I said I have 2 successful siblings, and I have 7 siblings. So it's either like saying my 5 other siblings aren't successful, or they don't count as siblings. For clarity, speaking of Baron, they're half siblings. But let me just be absolutely clear in case that somehow ever gets back to them. I want to clarify that I was being shitty and rude in an entirely different way. I meant generationally when I was talking. For the record, they've all lived fascinating lives that cover the gamut of experiences in America, and I love them all. I consider all of my siblings, half or whatever, as full, complete, and true siblings. And I feel particularly bad about what I said because all of my siblings have given me a gift which is impossible to repay. I have generations of nieces and nephews, which is to say I was born already an uncle. And I get the joy of seeing what generations of wonderful people look like carrying on the family name and in the family way, you know? What I really meant to say was that I have nothing to worry about because this generation, this litter of kids is well represented. And, you know, of this millennial group, 2 of us are killing it, so I can kick it. It feels like societally, the pressure's off. That's why it's a gift. I'm talking selfish stuff here. Societally, the pressure's off. I can live my life absolutely selfishly. And until recently, if I'm honest with y'all, that is exactly what I did. I've had a ball, y'all. When you got nieces and nephews who are like the best people on planet Earth, in my humble opinion, and you got siblings who have done just about everything under the sun, it's, I'm sure there are folks that get self-conscious about that kind of stuff, but further, with how spoiled I got to be, family was wonderfully supportive. If I wanted to finger paint all day, try to make a living doing that, I'm sure I could have. And felt proud of myself, too. Insufferably, annoyingly, what do they call it? Self-actualized or whatever the hell. Just annoyingly supportive. And supported. But I want to be real with y'all here, and maybe give this whole channel a little bit more context, because I think it's important, especially given the kind of stuff we're talking about. You know, when you're blessed like that, I think you get an opportunity to see a side of life that a lot of folks don't get to. It's like if you got to go to a casino and play with house money. With all the tension gone from this stuff, without pretty weighty seeming things. They seem weighty to me, like having family legacy on the line or what have you. When that's gone, you get to view things a little bit different. And it's not like there's not a place for someone in a family like that. Like, look, there's some value to having one member in a group who's the designated degenerate, who's just comfortable in that vein. sometimes somebody has a little too much fancy wine at a restaurant, says something to your group you ought not to say in polite company. It's useful to have somebody who can be like, listen, fella, full warning, I've been thrown out of a Denny's. I don't give a fuck about this place with the cloth napkins. Hey, nephew, hold my coat. It's the only one I have that doesn't stink that bad. You know, there's value in that. And I think it extends societally. Ought I to then be thrown out of that restaurant along with the guy I was bickering with in that hypothetical situation? Absolutely, yes. It will have been deserved, and I was absolutely, for real, thrown out of a Denny's, and I absolutely deserved it then too. But in society, there's value to people like that as well. And the thing that bugs me a little bit is that my reputation as a degenerate is under attack because I find myself now having to share space with people we used to agree were simply unacceptable to have at all. There's a certain, if you've ever been a degenerate, I'm not accusing anybody, but look, those of us in the gutter understand this. There's a certain pride we have in the class of folks that we will allow to be in the gutter. And we have, what makes us gutter people is the dignity to know we're better than the sewer. And that's what the Nazis are. And that's what modernly MAGA is. That's the sewer stuff. And I like to think your old pal Jake has the pride to not want to be associated with those folks. That much pride yet remains. And I suppose this is a long way of serving as a double apology for saying that Marjorie Taylor Greene should be pelted by trash. For the record, if you throw trash at a person, whoever that person is, you've committed assault and you should go to jail. You should serve your time and then you're forgiven and that's the end of it. But for the record, that's a crime that I was saying we should do. I want to be clear that I was teasing. I don't actually imagine any of us will ever actually be in the same room as Marjorie Taylor Greene, because hopefully by the time any of us get elected to the House of Representatives, she's in prison for something. But for the record, that would be a crime, and if you do it, you're also accepting that you're a gutter person. And you're better than that. If you're here, you're better than that. And I say this with some expertise myself as being a gutter person. Thank you for listening to my apology. Sorry, Ann, Chris, Tony, Mark, Mary, Lynn, Sarah, and Nick. Well. Han Solo saying justice is coming. Yes, indeed. Oh, Wicked Foxy Dragon. But what about when you throw trash at trash? Is that still considered a crime? I think so. I gotta tell you, what I said full-throated and I meant it, but it doesn't mean it was right. You just gotta understand, I do have still, even though we're trying to raise the bar and I'm trying to lead by example, which means I think America, like your old pal Jake, has got too comfortable being unambitious. until recently, I was happy to be a bump on a log. If you're a local news producer, baby, you got it made, except for the terrible paycheck. I mean, you get to be involved in the news, but all the heat, that's taken by somebody else. You can fly off the handle if you want. It doesn't matter. It's just your coworkers say, shut up, and then you move on with your life. So I tell you this as saying that as I try to dust myself off and as America tries to once again raise the bar, understand it'll be an imperfect journey. And hopefully we're on the way to hiring what I call a mature ass adult to additionally shame me into shame me in real time, I guess, as I'm saying these things on air, into saying less shameful things from time to time. Also, as I say this, understand that if I come across Marjorie Taylor Greene, I may entirely pelt her with trash. If I'm holding like a rotten cabbage and she's in the room, I know I'm gonna go to jail. But like, I'm but a mortal man. I have only so much will. Christ. All right, let's talk about villains acting villainously and further responsible talk. This was a suggestion from Lady J, and I appreciate it. Speaking of rhetoric, I have quite consciously, with my language, dehumanized MAGA. And I've done so because, in my opinion, the left is entirely too patient with people that deserve a lack of patience. I think there are things that, I think if you're patient with some things, you devalue everything. There's some, somebody opens their mouth and says certain sentences, they have demonstrated that nothing else they have to say is worth hearing. But we should be aware of the kind of language I'm aping when I talk about them as, for example, filth. Again, I say it full-throated, full-hearted, and I mean it, but we should know that that we're approaching the line of decency, and here is it put in scientific terms. Here's the danger brought up by Lady J. Now, in truth, this was sent with the intention of understanding the right wing, and I think this is going to be good to learn for that reason, so that you understand what the opposition is thinking. If you want to understand what the opposition is feeling, think about how you felt when we called MAGA filth. Bear in mind that I also think MAGA is filth. I also think they are deserving of retribution, not violent retribution, but societal retribution for the harm they have done. I think I think some making up for, I don't know what the phrase is, but they will have to do some making up for what they did, or at the very least, an appropriate time of hanging their heads low in shame is called for. But nonetheless, let's look at where this problem comes from. What Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Viktor Orban understand about your brain? Obviously, this is from Politico. Why do people believe some politicians' lies even when they have been proven false? And why do so many of the same people peddle conspiracy theories? Lying and conspiratorial thinking might seem to be two different problems, but they turn out to be related. This is from Marcel Danesi. Marcel Danesi studies political rhetoric and have tried to understand how populist politicians use language to develop a cult-like following, divide nations, create culture wars, and instill hatred. This pattern goes back to antiquity and is seen today in leaders including former President Donald Trump, Hungary's Viktor Orban, and Russia's Vladimir Putin. These leaders are capable of using words and speeches to whip people into such an emotional tempest that they will do things like march on the seat of Congress or invade a neighboring country. Okay. What makes this kind of speech worrying is that it's not just emotions like aggression they can manipulate. Politicians also use rhetoric to influence the public's thoughts and beliefs, spread lies and conspiracy theories. Those lies and conspiracy theories are stubbornly resistant to countervailing facts and can sow divisions that destabilize their own societies. All right, they go on to explain what their research covers. They basically looked at all these politicians' speeches, found out what they had in common, and researched those elements of them. The first step to manipulating the minds of the public, or really the precondition, is that listeners need to be in the right emotional state. In order to hack into the minds of the public, people need to feel fear or uncertainty. That could be caused by economic instability or pre-existing cultural prejudices, but the emotional basis is fear. Pausing there. When you're trying to deprogram someone from this, remember that the emotional basis is fear. But also, understand that if you lie to them and tell them that there's nothing to be afraid of when there is, in fact, serious problems right around the corner, you'll lose them forever. Or at least you will have lost them in that conversation. And likely you will have lost them forever. What I would suggest you do is talk about your plans for addressing their fears, your pitch that differs from the insanity that they're being taught. You can also lean in to their fears. If they're saying, for example, what's a classic right-winger thing? Foreigners are coming here illegally and taking our jobs. Be honest with them, but make sure that you are targeting their fear in the direction it needs to go. Like, look, your job is going away. Yeah, it's not being taken by somebody who doesn't speak English and is willing to work for $5 an hour. If your job could be done by someone who is willing to work for $5 an hour, you didn't have much job security to begin with. No, your job's being taken by a machine. It's very difficult to see the person that takes your job because they're already doing your job. They're your coworker. What happens is your place of business gets a widget or a wadget or whatever that makes it slightly more efficient to do your job. And your boss makes the heartless decision that he now only needs 2 of you instead of 3 of you, and you're the person that drew the short straw. If you look at it like that, you could look at it like both your coworkers drew the short straw, because they are not going to get paid more to cover your responsibilities. They will simply be told they must now do your job in addition to theirs, and they are expected to get it done because there is more machinery helping them. That's what happens. And if you waste your time bickering with immigrants, people who are literally fleeing for their lives, then you will have successfully helped the people who profit off buying the machine and firing you. That's who you will have helped. You will have helped the very people who are getting rid of your job. That is a way you can discuss that. No, it doesn't cover every single thing that happens. And if you're a lefty who's typing right now, and I'll check in a second, I'm busting your chops a little bit, but if you're a lefty who's typing right now about how that doesn't represent the majority of X, or how there is more this or that or the other thing, I would say that their arguments should be countered by arguments that require. We shouldn't hold ourselves to a higher. Let me try this again. We shouldn't hold ourselves to a higher standard when it comes to countering their arguments of accuracy. If they're talking broad strokes about what happened to somebody's job and they say just immigrants, when you offer a counter example, you don't have to paint an incredibly vivid picture. You can give an example. Start your sentence or your argument with the words "for example" and move on from there. But don't make it seem like listening to you is going to be tedious, while listening to them is easy, because out of simple exhaustion, they'll choose to believe the thing that's easier to understand. All right, in order to hack into the minds of the public, people need to feel fear or uncertainty. This could be caused by economic moving down. In this state, dehumanizing metaphors are very effective. My research shows that this language taps into and switches on existing circuits in the brain that link together important and salient images and ideas. In effect, metaphors bypass higher cognitive reasoning centers to make linkages that may not have a basis in reality. And when that happens, a person is less likely to notice the lie because it just feels right. That's it exactly. When it comes, then, to the just feeling right, that is going to be tricky for you, but you should pay most attention there. Understand, why does it feel right to them, and then address it from there. Also, make sure that you are not letting them forget that by choosing wrong in this situation, they will be helping the thing that's hurting them. So either you or the politician or right-wing whatever crazy thing that they're following is lying to them. One of you is lying. And if they pick wrong, they are helping the person or thing that is hurting them. Make sure that is understood. The pattern becomes more effective the more it is used. According to studies, the more these circuits are activated, the more hardwired they become, until it becomes almost impossible to turn them off. So, if you tried this once, if you tried talking down your friend, your family member, your unfortunate coworker, whatever, understand that repetition is being used by the enemy to affect them. So, you use repetition as well. The same is true of conspiracy theories. The neuroscientific research shows that people who believe them develop more rigid neural pathways, meaning they find it difficult to rethink situations once this pattern of thinking is established. Barron is not Donald Trump's child. I will forever believe that, so they are probably correct. This also means that if someone is already more susceptible to believing lies in the form of dehumanizing metaphors and is the same, and this same person comes across a big lie or conspiracy theory that fits into that well-trodden neural pathway, they are more likely, all right, that's not terribly revelatory. With the rise of populist and far-right political movements in the 2010s, the use of dehumanizing metaphors to engender hatred of foreigners or of those who are different in some way has spread worldwide. In 2016, during a state-orchestrated public campaign against refugees and migrants in Hungary, Orban characterized them as poison. In August 2017, when groups of white supremacists arrived at the college town at Charlottesville, Virginia, to participate in the Unite the Right rally, the protesters used both animal and dirt metaphors, when they claimed they were fighting against the parasitic class of anti-white vermin and the anti-white, anti-American filth. Doesn't that sound familiar? Putin's labeling of the Ukrainian leadership as Nazi falls into this category, a powerful slur against the Jewish leader Zelensky, whom Putin called a disgrace to the Jewish people. Significantly, he uses this alongside dehumanizing language to justify the invasion of Ukraine, claiming it as a mission in denazification. And so on and so forth. Let me jump down here, though, a little bit. Significantly, Trump also supported his big lie with the same pattern of conspiracy theories and fake news reports in far-right social media, such as QAnon, that spurred Trump supporters to attack the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. The sustained use of the central metaphor of a cabal of satanic, cannibalistic abusers of children conspiring against Trump will easily fit into the entrenched neural pathways of somebody who's already willing to believe. The tricky thing about all this is that some people are more susceptible to this type of rhetorical manipulation than others. This comes down to critical thinking and brain training. If one wants to or needs to believe, then the language works manipulatively and the neural pathways are built up. If we aren't fearful or primed to believe, our brain has mechanisms to alert us to the deceit. Simply put, if we are constantly critical of lies, our brains are more trained to notice them. Unfortunately, the research into this brain writing also shows that once people begin to believe lies, they are unlikely to change their minds even when confronted with evidence that contradicts their belief. It's a form of brainwashing. Once the brain has carved out a well-worn path of believing deceit, it is even harder to step out of that path. So the same thing like 40 different times. Let's just jump down. Not all hope is lost, however. History has shown that disruptive events, such as the toppling of a regime or the loss of a war or, say, a former president going to prison, can force a new perspective on, and the brain is also, can force a new perspective and the brain is able to recalibrate. Do you remember the days after January 6th? It seemed for a moment like, wow, maybe things are about to change. And unfortunately, we lost that moment. We lost that moment because we had a cowardly, corrupt Justice Department which was unwilling to take this seriously. And let's hand out damnation where necessary. Kevin McCarthy also normalized Trump again. Mitch McConnell voted against impeachment and did not rally his folks. Want to know why? I don't mind. That God was doing some of the hard work for the American people with Mitch McConnell. It's because of that. This is the uplifting. Okay, let's go back. So it is at least possible to change this pattern once the critical mind is engaged away from the frenzy of fear and manipulation. The lie can become clear. This is the uplifting moral tale that can be gleaned from history. All the great liars, from dictators to autocrats, were eventually defeated by truth, which eventually will win out. But the bad news is that you need that kind of disruption. Without these jarring events to bring a dose of reality, it is unlikely that people with strong convictions will ever change their minds. Something that benefits the autocrat and endangers their society. Okay. Couple of thoughts. Thing number one is you do not need it to be a society-wide, as far as I've seen, a society-wide disruptive event. Look for disruptive events in the lives of MAGA folks. Look for something they consider personally to be a disruptive event. It doesn't mean if you've got a family member that, say, just got a serious medical diagnosis that you use that opportunity to try to change their politics. No, it just means if they see something that Donald Trump did or Ron DeSantis did that disturbs them personally, there's your disruptive event. There's where you hone in on how they look at them. That is where you take advantage of that. It's an opening, use it. That is what I glean from this. And what I would suggest to you is that you look for people that you're trying to convince, you look for their disruptive event, and also remember that it comes originally as the following of an authoritarian psychopath. It comes from a place of fear. Address their fears. Provide them. They're doing what they're doing because in their minds it's better than nothing. So provide them with something more constructive to do. Now, as for my own calling MAGA filth and vermin, scum, sewage, to be honest, I'm going to keep right on doing it. In part, it's because I do think we don't dehumanize. I think we humanize filth too much on the left. I think we have done a disservice to people who the left are supposed to be there to protect, which is everybody. by letting cowardice get labeled as patience, or if I'm being generous, letting laziness be labeled as patience or maturity. There is behavior which we need to have an utter lack of patience for. And it's all I can do not to run out in the street these days. So I will still call Marjorie Taylor Greene. I will still call Kevin McCarthy. I'll still call those folks filth. Well, I'm here feeling a bit mature in this moment. Just a tiny bit mature. Let me put on a new rule, and I'll try to stick to it. I will avoid calling those people that were conned by them. I will avoid calling them filth. I don't want to dehumanize an entire group of people. I certainly want to dehumanize the individual subhumans that I'm aware of, such as McCarthy and Green. Them, I wouldn't give them the honor of thinking of them as humans. But the people they con, I'll knock it off. Or at least I'll be trying to knock it off. And if I fail to do that, I fly off the handle. I invite you to point out that I'm being a dingus. But I'll put in an honest effort to do so. What did Michael Brooks say? Ruthless to systems, kind to people. Ha ha ha! Oh, goddamn, Jess. Ben, puberty missed me. Shabibo. Oh, God. I'm gonna remember that. The anti-corporatist. Am assembling a buffet my wife bought online that was delivered today. The first line on the instructions is, thank you for purchase on our products. Oh. Uh-oh. Dawned on me, it comes down to whether you want to be racist or not. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Dawned on me, Jake, there's an important message from Bo you need to play on Salty Saturday. Titled Meaning of Words. Sorry, I have no tech understanding, just reaching out. That's okay. You told me now. Let me pop this up here. Oh, look at that. What you can do is live. So All right, I will look for it. I'll look for it. I don't see it immediately, but I will definitely look for it. That joke, by the way, was brought to you by my father, who every time I would go to dinner with him and me mum when I was a wee little nipper, he would, we'd be returning and we'd see the other car, he would say, "Oh, look, Mom's home." Or if it was his car in the driveway, because again, we were all in one car together, he'd be like, "Oh, look, Dad's home." I'll admit to you now, lest you ever start to think I'm a wise man, I'd fall for it. I'd say, "Yay!" Wait a minute. I'm missing something here. Yeah. There's a part 2 that I'm trying to load up, and it's killing me. Oh! Right. Now, I just did a whole segment on why it's probably not good that I sometimes fly off the handle a little bit. Here is in defense of that. As I remind you, I'm just a mortal human being who occasionally gets blinding rage at some of the things our leaders do. Here's another viewer suggestion, a little gift from Alabama. And I think it goes a good long way to explaining why I feel the way I feel.
This is Against All Enemies, a show about threats to American democracy. Political violence is on the rise. An alarming percentage of our alarm. We an American mayor of New Bern years now, of a small town in rural Alabama that has been unfolding for over 2 years now. Patrick Braxton was elected the first African-American mayor of New Bern, Alabama, a majority black town. But the all-white city council refused to cede power. They literally locked the doors to City Hall to prevent Braxton from gaining access.
So those folks that lock the doors rather than let a black man be mayor, they are filth. They are subhuman. They're sewage. They're vermin. Just to, if I haven't covered all the dehumanizing language that is used, imagine I remembered it all and apply it to them, because those specific individuals I 100% believe are subhuman. Just so we're crystal clear and not crystal knocked.
He was told by a white woman that the town was not ready for a black mayor.
Mother.
I am highlighting this story on this channel because it has not received nearly the attention it deserves, and it has a lot to teach us about entrenched power and systemic racism. More on that in a minute. Let me just read you some of the facts of this case from some outstanding local reporting by the capital B. The People's Bank of Greensboro and the city clerk barred Mr. Braxton from accessing the town's financial records and bank accounts, and the post office refused to give him the town's mail. We're talking about the mayor being refused access to the city's funds and the city's mail. Capital B reports that Mr. Braxton has been targeted for other harassment. Drones have followed him to his home, and a white man almost ran him off the road, and his white colleagues in the volunteer fire department have failed to back him up during emergencies involving black residents. And when Lakenna Lewis began helping Mr. Braxton, the founder of Selma nonprofit Love is What Love Does received handwritten threats with swastikas and racial epithets. One of the letters had a drawing of her and Braxton being lynched, Capital B reports.
I don't feel bad about dehumanizing those kinds of folks. And I feel, and if I'm being honest, these are feelings I'm talking about. They're not always rational, and please bear that in mind, but I feel that our insistence upon a Christ-like kindness to the worst villains is not morality. It's not the moral thing to do. It's not the decent thing to do. Because our treatment of these folks like they're just different people. They're just people with different views. You know, I like white bread. They like marbled rye. Treating them like that has given them permission to treat this mayor like he's done something wrong for having been born. We bear some of the responsibility. Though, in my opinion, again, these are feelings, in my genuine opinion and to my eternal shame, we bear some of the responsibility for that man's treatment. For the drawings of lynchings that were mailed out, we bear some responsibility. The fact that those of us who are, at the very least, those of us who are comfortable getting kicked out of a fancy restaurant, didn't show up to their homes to piss on their lawns. That's, to me, a sign of a society that does not have its priorities straight. And I'm embarrassed.
If you've ever wondered what institutionalized racism looks like, look no further. Until the election of Patrick Braxton, New Bern had always been overseen by a white ruling class. Virtually every elected position was held by a white person. The moment they realized they would have to share power, they dug in. I talked with Kareem Creighton, an election rights lawyer, about this. For what it's worth, I graduated from high school with Kareem in Montgomery, Alabama, not too far down Highway 80 from New Bern, Alabama. Well, I appreciate your optimism. I actually share it, but I don't want to be naive. Are you familiar with the story which has just come out of the mayor of the small town, majority black town, overwhelmingly majority black town with a white government that finally elected the black mayor? Do you know the one I'm talking about?
I'm familiar with the story.
Can you give us the primer on that and the window it provides into some of the structures that even in majority black communities limit representation?
Sure. So New Bern is a small town in the Black Belt, kind of west of Montgomery, probably halfway between Montgomery and the state line with Mississippi.
Okay.
And it is a city, as you said, that has a solid majority of African Americans in it now. It has changed over time, but until this year, it had always had white mayors. And so for the first time, a black mayor gets chosen. He attempts to do the things one would do as mayor, right? Start to appoint people, try to get access to his office, and he's blocked at every turn. And there are these extraordinary efforts.
Literally, they lock.
Literally, physically not allowed. Correct. He is not allowed to get in. He's not allowed to do any of the ministerial basic things that you would need to do to function as mayor of this town, even though.
How much do you want to bet that they would then turn around and say, like, look at him, he hasn't even shown up to work? Motherfuckers, I swear to God. Tulsa. The Tulsa massacre happened because the people who did it were confident that they would get away with it, and they were right. They knew they lived in a society that would allow them to get away with this behavior. I don't know how this story ends, but if it does not end with every last one of those see you next Tuesdays in a prison cell, then that is what you can do here. I do want to stick to the thing I wrote down because it was important to say this and mean it, and so I'm going to say this and mean it. Acknowledge that the opposition are people, while also acknowledging that there are bad people. What do we do with bad people? People who actually do things that harm others. We put them in a jail cell until they learn to get along. That is what we have to do with these folks. Let's find out if we got work to do or if America's farther along than I thought.
He had been duly elected as mayor. And in fact, the old guard, who clearly were not happy with this outcome, turned to the local probate judge to try to block a lot of this activity. And so there's now a problem that has now found its way into federal court to try and get some remedy to this. And, I was reading that and I thought, absolutely, to your point, numbers only do part of the work. There are always instances where people who have held on to power, even illegitimately so, will not relinquish or share that power. It's a sad reality, but I think it sometimes means we have to go to courts to enforce the law. And, one wonders if there are other places, I'm sure there are, where essentially they're out of the public view, little small towns, hamlets, where this kind of dynamic is going on. But that's why it's so important to have A, attention to these matters, but B, courts to back up what the law requires us to do. Because otherwise people say, well, that might be the law outside of this town, but here, right, we're in charge. And that just isn't how democracy should work. I'd say one more thing about that. One of the other weird and, odd parts of where, the Supreme Court has been about this was, in 2013, they announced to the world that, well, we no longer have this pressing need for having Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which would prevent changes in law in places like Alabama. And without it, I think it has sent a signal. We have a lot of evidence in the Brennan Center about how new suppressive laws have gone on the books, but it's also given, I think, aid and comfort to this kind of defiance. So now, in order to get some answers and some remedy, this individual who is duly elected has to go to federal court, which takes time and money. And, again, the voters in the meantime elected a person to do a thing and nothing is getting done. So it could.
Here's the thing. And I'll admit I don't understand the legality enough, unfortunately, to really break down, I guess, the finer points. But it's a federal civil rights lawsuit that he's filing. Now, my understanding, which I want to stress could be wrong, but my understanding is that the remedy here will be to restore to him the rights which were taken away, and he'll win. Why will he win? Because it's an obvious case. That's not good enough for me. I want to know why the Department of Justice has not acted. I want to know why these people aren't under arrest. Did they not interfere with the will of the voters? The voters said, this man is the mayor. And other bunch of randos just decided, nah. That needs to be addressed. We weren't asking when we the people made that man mayor. It wasn't a suggestion. It is so. Denying that must result in imprisonment. It's that simple. Nothing short of that will be satisfactory. And the fact that I am not sure what will happen to these folks is a disgrace.
Easily be that this case doesn't get resolved until well into this person's term, or if at the end of it, you sort of look at that and think, well, is that sort of the, justice that we think our democracy demands? I think not.
This story is not just about the residents of New Bern, Alabama. White supremacy is alive and well in this country, and New Bern is a warning about the lengths extremists will go to hold on to power. In New Bern, they literally stopped helping black people with life-threatening emergencies. This is from another local report. Braxton, who was the elected mayor at this point, says he was the only volunteer firefighter in his department to respond to a tree fire near a black person's home in the town. As Braxton actively worked to put out the fire, he says, one of his white colleagues tried to take the keys to his fire truck to keep him from using it. In another incident, Braxton, who was off duty at the time, overheard an emergency dispatch call for a black woman experiencing a heart attack. He drove to the fire station to retrieve the automated external defibrillator, or AED machine, but the locks were changed so he couldn't get into the facility. He raced back to his house, grabbed his personal machine, and drove over to the house, but he didn't make it in time to save her. This is how
Murder. Bare minimum manslaughter. Here's how we deal with this stuff. We don't sit back and think, well, we got to understand how big is this problem. Nope. As soon as we see it, we deal with it. What's this Alabama town called again? New Bern, Alabama. Okay. New Bern, Alabama is the new pet project of WYCD. We're going to bring law to that town. These motherfuckers are going to jail. Sorry, I cursed. Let me try that again. These miserable heathens are going to jail. And we're going to put them there. They do not belong in polite society. They're a bunch of goddamn savages, and we're going to civilize them in New Bern, Alabama. They let a lady die. They tried to let a home burn to the ground. They tried to stop. They didn't. They were worse than just not helping. They tried to hinder someone who was trying to help. That's attempted murder. We're going to civilize this place. WYCD is going to pay special attention to New Bern, Alabama, the individuals involved with this, and we are not going to stop until they are all imprisoned. Just a heads up, that is our near future. Beginning now.
happening in America right now. My daughter shared with me an expression that applies really well here. If you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. Hi, Burn the Boats fans. I want to take a quick break to talk about our sponsor for today's show, Rhone. Men's closets are long overdue for a radical reinvention, and Rhone has...
So, to my knowledge, not a day of jail time for any of that. This is our new pet project. We're not going to reshift the focus of the whole channel, yada, yada, yada. No, we're still going to keep it varied. We're still going to follow modern events, and we're going to be checking in with New Bern, Alabama, and the individual sons of bitches who run the place. We're going to be checking in on the fire department. We're going to be checking in on the cops. We're going to be checking in on the city council. We are going to make sure that that elected mayor is able to do their job. And the people who tried to get other citizens killed, they're going to jail. That's what we're going to do. To be continued, my friends. Thank you for the suggestion. Stuart Brooks makes you really regret Lincoln getting assassinated and Andrew Johnson taking us down the darkest timeline. Yes. Yeah. Andrew Johnson, arguably responsible for the worst horrors that America endured in the 21st and 22nd century. Dawned on me, 22nd, 20th and 21st century. Dawned on me, I hate that they put ads in the middle of their videos. Yes, me too. Wireless Mike. New Bern is a town in Hale County, Alabama, United States. As of the 2020 census, the population of the town was 133. Good. So if we all show up, it's a fair scrap. Good. That I think it is incredibly valuable to adopt a technique of dealing with things immediately. Just immediately. I don't care if it had a population of 133 million somehow, but I'm delighted that it has a tiny population. This is good because it will be used as an example. And if we are going to put 20 people in jail and put a significant chunk of the population of that town in jail, then good. Let them feel it in the as the tumbleweeds bounce down the roads. Let them think about why they're missing a big chunk of their town. Obsessive audio. The two expelled Justins of the Tennessee Three just won their seats back. Oof. Hell yes. Love to see it. That's excellent. Oh. And good to see Elaine Sharp. I got one more for you here. Ooh, do I? Oh God, I got a hell of an interesting thing here. All right. Let me record this. I got 3 videos for you actually in relatively rapid succession. But together, and they're short, don't worry, but together I feel like they paint an interesting picture. I don't really I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about them. But let's get it started with a little Bo with the fifth column. We were told to check out Bo earlier. This isn't that video, but partial credit. Little Bo with the fifth column talking about the GOP reaction to Trump's indictment.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again.
Howdy, Bo.
So today we are going to talk a little bit about one specific reaction to the news about Trump and how it may be the start of a trend and how we may see more and more Republican figures start echoing these statements, especially since he's now kind of losing the faith among the base. Okay. Today's indictment serves as an important reminder. Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be President of the United States. Goes on, our country is more important than one man. Our Constitution is more important than any one man's career. You want to take a guess at who it was? Pence. Pence. Strong words from Pence. I mean, that's probably something he needed permission to write. That statement is a sign that the Republican Party is going to start openly pushing back harder against Trump and Trumpism. Notice, any one man's career. Anyone. It's not specific to Trump. When the
Let's just take a moment to appreciate the he needed permission to write that one dig. Ooh, ouch. But yes, he's making an interesting point. Any one person's career. Do go on.
Republican Party starts to make a turn, understand those people who do not turn with it, who were part of Trumpism, who were massive Trump supporters, who were MAGA, America First, all of those terms, if they do not fall in line with the rest of the Republican Party, the remnants of the Republican Party, they're going to move against them as well. This isn't an off-the-cuff statement from Pence. This is putting out a plan on how to get the Republican Party back. Now, Pence being Pence, and a lot of Republicans being the way a lot of Republicans are, there's probably going to be some back and forth on this. There's probably going to be candidates who take a really hard stance today, but then they may forget that next week. You're going to see a lot of wishy-washy behavior on this. And the key part to keep in mind as it plays out is that they are trying to shift that MAGA base back towards the Republican version of center. You're going to see more of this. Trump's polling about what Republicans believe as far as whether or not he's guilty, all of that stuff, combined with fresh troubles for him, it is not a good recipe for the former president to maintain his political potency.
All right. But that's interesting. No shade on Bo. That is interesting. And I think it's a very astute point. However, look at that in context with this as well.
So President Trump has sent a cease and desist letter to the RNC saying that they can't use his name and likeness for fundraising purposes. Trump has sent many cease and desist letters in the past, and often they have resulted in absolutely nothing whatsoever. So you might think that this cease and desist letter is also meritless, but there might actually be something to this. Just because Trump was president doesn't mean he can't use his name and likeness anymore. Individuals often can control the monetization of their likeness. Now, some jurisdictions say that if you are a celebrity or a politician, you can't sue for misappropriation of likeness. You're a public figure. But most jurisdictions say that even politicians or celebrities can still monetize and control the use of their likeness. It just depends on whether their likeness is being used for exploitative purposes or not. And fundraising emails from the RNC probably qualify as exploitative, and Trump might be on legal footing if he wants to prevent them from using his name and likeness. So this likeness is telling you to subscribe or I will see you in court.
And yet, I got one more for you. So what have we got so far? Appears to be a change of strategy amongst those folks who were still carrying water for Trump in the Republican Party. Now it also looks like Trump is saying Republican Party can't use his likeness anymore.
The 2020
Got one more for you here. Check this out.
The election was stolen. There's no basis for this. It's not true. We believe you. Great. You should give money to our PAC. Okay. I'm being investigated for having classified documents, lying about them, my involvement in January 6th, attempting to overturn the election in Georgia, paying hush money, etc. And we're being investigated for our involvement. Allegedly. Use the money we raised to pay for it. Okay. Is this legal? There are no legal red flags at this point. How did you get my home? However, it's unclear how much influence Trump has over who has their legal fees covered and who doesn't. What about all the Trump supporters that are giving money to the PAC and just paying for all the legal fees? If you're giving money to Trump in 2023, you're probably okay with it. Trump deserves my money because he told me that the 2020.
And there it is. So look, all together, I am just putting the ear to the ground. I am hearing that the old-fashioned GOP types are starting to turn against Trump and are using language that should be a warning to the diehard MAGA folks. Trump is starting to turn against the GOP. He's getting stingy, as he tends to do. He has put in a ton of effort to tie himself up financially with the GOP. He has made it so that his ruination affects them financially. It's also worth noting, per that last thing, he spent $40 million on legal defense, and GOP is no longer paying for that. They haven't been for a while. All told, this looks like the break is starting to happen. This is the hair crack that you're going to see widen into a chasm. This is also why I really suggest you run for office. And if you yourself are not comfortable being the person in the seat, get on somebody's campaign and help them run for office. But we see where the pressure point is with all of this. There's going to be money problems galore coming up. Especially, bear in mind, Trump has been soliciting donations from Republicans as a whole. He has been hoovering all the small dollar donations. Hopefully, this means a lot of the folks that would have donated to Republicans are just going to be tapped out. But it's also worth noting, DeSantis sucked up a lot of donations that would have gone to Republicans from big dollar donors. Now, they have what seems to be near infinite pools of cash, but understand, they're savvy business folks. They might not have souls, but they have business understanding. They're not going to just drop money infinitely into an operation that isn't going to end up winning the election. So hit them where it hurts. Run for office. Help somebody else run for office. Make them have to work. Even if you don't win, you will be striking a blow just by making them spend money on commercials where they weren't planning to spend money already. That is what to do. That is how to hurt them. And the beginning to a whole lot of plans for improving the United States starts with winning the House, Senate, and White House in 2024. The strategy is shaping up. Let's make sure there is not a single uncontested race in a red district in this country. Not one. Make them work for every single seat. And by the way, some of those will wind up being dark horse victories. Let's see what y'all have to say. Anti-corporatists. Politicians are investments to them with a ridiculous return on investment. Absolutely. Yes. Pinker Bell. I feel like the old-fashioned GOP types have been biding time, waiting until they can put Trump aside, and are now letting the legal system take care of getting him out of the way. Yeah. He could have been a televangelist and done the same grift for gullible followers. The same grift of gullible followers thing, tax-free. Absolutely. Stuart Brooks. Mitch is frozen with anger at Trump. Yeah. Oh, God. Pinker Bell, I'm sure the RNC cut off the legal funding. Yeah. Because what would it accomplish, truly? Dawned on me, Smith isn't going to save us. We must vote. Vote them all out. Hell yes. Vote and run. Or help somebody else run. Ooh, We got a new member. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Darn it, I can't pull it up. Well, thank you very much for joining. And folks, gotta tell you, despite the fact that I was mildly furious for a good chunk of it, I do want to say it's just the highlight of my day hanging out with y'all. I have a blast doing this. I hope to keep on doing it. If you'd like me to, hit the like button. I see you have folks in the Wicked Senate. No notes. No notes. Thank you for the likes. And consider subscribing if you haven't already. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake. I'll see you next time, tomorrow, 9 o'clock, for Friday Peace Talks. Oh, it's so loud.